high dose, sleep, and Sigma, a 1,900 milligram Dextromethorphan trip report uploaded to Erowid in January of 2018. Gender, male, body weight, 150 pounds. After extensively researching the effects, side effects, and long-term effects of DXM, I decided that I'd give it a go. At the time of this experience, about 1 year and 3 months ago now, I was feeling quite destitute. That is to say that I was condemned to a life of self-propagated ruination, and that I was a hopeless lump of useless flesh. I'd recently been dumped by my girlfriend, who at the time had decided that I was too intense for her, and that had screwed my brain over in many ways. I'd become adamantly self-destructive, and no challenge drug-based or otherwise would worry me as long as there was opportunity to end my pitiful, post-pubescent life. So there I was, feeling wretched after a long, hard day at work. I didn't particularly feel like doing anything productive, so I dug out my Ziploc baggie of DXM and filled 4 00-size capsules, which had previously contained kava, filling them tightly with the white powder, licked my fingers and swallowed all 4, chased with minimal water. I then decided that I was feeling tired. This was around T plus 1 hour after ingestion, and I was starting to feel the effects of the DXM, albeit much more intensely than usual. This dose having been the highest I've had the trepidation to go through, I was extremely unsettled by the intensity. My muscles were becoming almost unbearably tense, and I had extremely bad ringing in my ears. I could feel the muscles around my eyes being stretched to capacity, and this was becoming painful. I also noticed that I was drooling a lot, which was intriguing because I normally only experience that with ketamine or agarics. The Simpsons were on the TV, and it had gained an extremely flat, photo-like quality, and the voices sounded like garbled metallic gibberish. I switched off the TV and laid on my bed, realizing that I've hugely overdosed and resigning to the fact that I'd either have to ride it out or have somebody call a poison control center. A couple of my friends were downstairs and they said they'd come in and check on me periodically. I gave my friend a shout and explained my situation, barely coherently. He got the main gist and decided that it would be better if firstly I took a paracetamol, and secondly, that he kept me company. I laid on my bed once more, while my friend rolled what appeared to be a huge joint. He offered me some and held it to my mouth, not wanting to offend him by declining his kind offer. I took perhaps 5 or 6 massive tokes and laid back, experiencing the most intense trip I'd ever had. My friend had played 9 Inch Nails, the Fragile, which was just exacerbating my increasingly distressed state. I could feel my sense of logic and reality rapidly dissolving. I remember looking at a few of my pictures on the wall. My sensory palette had become jumbled, and blues had turned green, greens violet, reds gained a cloudy texture, and the air gained a syrupy viscosity. I tried explaining my distress to my friend, who took time to comprehend. He dealt me the paracetamol, 2 500 milligram tablets, and gave me a cigarette, despite the fact that I was quite heavily anesthetized. I managed to squirm my way into a comfortable position and meditate, concentrating on my heart chakra and my breathing. The state that followed left me in a state of delirious awe. Never had I witnessed such awesome effects from DXM, but I'll try my best to describe them. After a few minutes of concentrating on my breathing and listening to my heart, which I could feel pounding through my ribcage, a reassuring sensation, I hadn't completely lost sensory perception yet. I started to feel a strong vibration at my crown chakra. The deeper I would breathe, the stronger it would get. This would have all been quite normal, except for the fact that it wasn't synchronized with my heartbeat. It was a separate rhythm, and as far as I could tell in my delusional state, it meant I had assimilated the aura of somebody else. As I continued concentrating, this sensation immersed my entire body. It stabbed at my nerve cells and made my body feel alive with energy. How ironic that around that time, I fell asleep after awakening. My friend was still awake, albeit very stoned from what he told me later, and he informed me that it was around 5 in the morning, and that I'd been asleep roughly 3 hours. My hearing had become so muffled and tinny that it was hard to adhere to whatever was on the TV at the time. I peered out of my bedroom window and noticed that the sky looked green. I could smell the sweat soaked into my clothes, and I could barely move through stiffness. My friend had smoked his way through a quarter of weed and was offering me a few tokes on yet another enormous joint. A few more tokes, and I was back in the state I was in a few hours previously. Everything had been tinted gray in the morning light of the Kentish sunrise. The sky was still green. I felt completely overwhelmed. I didn't know where the hell I was, who the hell I was, or what the hell my friend was. His eyes bulged out of his face, his neck constantly extended and contracted. The walls contorted and pulsated with this bizarre rhythm I was still experiencing. I wigged at the hallucinations I saw. I watched a neon green caterpillar scale the side of my television, disappear and consequently reappear from my friend's arm. I became convinced that I was a bizarre, multi-tendrilled creature from a faraway land, and that I was sitting at the pinnacle of a huge mountain. I'd look at my hand, and it would seem 20 times the size of my head. The most interesting effect would be when I peered at the wall next to my bed. I could see through it, and I was able to create an extension of my bedroom in my mind's eye, with various yellow-leafed trees and hopping, spring-mounted creatures, which spewed rainbow-colored nebulas of gas. Between my waking times, which were all too sporadic, I'd become lost in a sleepy, delusional world. I'd become confused over my identity, and I'd metamorphose into various imaginary characters, awakening into further confusion over who the hell I was and where the hell I was. This state lasted, to the best of my knowledge, 12 hours. At 4 in the afternoon, when I'd returned a little closer to reality, I got up and shakily went to make myself a cup of tea. I took 2 more paracetamol and devoured what remained of my Lucky Charm. I felt physically exhausted and unpleasantly sick. I still felt confused over this previous identity crisis, but I managed to piece together what had happened. As soon as my motor skills were usable again, I went and played around with the vaults of a reputable harm reduction website, and eventually to the DXM frequently asked questions. I'd read about plateau sigma before, but when the time came, I found that I was too canned to identify it until afterwards. From what was described on the frequently asked questions, I had experienced most of it: auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, and confusion, which was dominant throughout the entire experience. I'd probably destroyed a sizable chunk of my brain in the process, and yes, adhering to the frequently asked questions, it was an extremely unpleasant but intriguing state of consciousness, worth further exploration despite the risks. So there we have it. In conclusion, there wasn't much else I could have done to prepare myself for plateau sigma, although it came with plenty of warning. Extreme trip intensity, I suppose. It definitely took me off guard, as the delusion it imbibes overshadows all reasoning. Therefore, I learned from this experience firstly how plateau sigma manifests itself, and secondly, precautionary measures which should have been common sense anyway. Funny how some people have to be knocked for 6 before they realize what's happened, but that's how people's minds and logic work. Prior to this experience, I've taken a few second and third plateau doses and found that they induce a state-dependent memory and recollection. I could remember and indeed feel many aspects of my previous sigma trip, which were previously not experienced at these plateaus. The state-dependent memory has proven itself useful already. I'm currently taking a course in programming in JavaScript, and I find that I can link the robo procedures in this course virtually without inhibition or restraint. Wonders will never cease. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Until next time.